Thank you. Welcome back. How are the breakout sessions in the break? Good, good. So I'm just going to be here for a minute to welcome you to General Session 4, Cooking the Diaspora. I wanted to thank the Flavor Discovery sponsors, Bush's Beans, Culinary Sciences, Kikkoman Sales USA, and US Soy. And now I'm pleased to welcome to the podium Brendan Walsh, a CIA alum and Dean of the Schools of Culinary Arts and Pastry Arts, to introduce the African Cuisines concentration.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate this moment in time. Yesterday, Scott Barton, I don't know how many of you were here yesterday, but Scott Barton mentioned my culinary upbringing, which was as a Bronx Irish Catholic, and which means there wasn't a lot of great food. As my mom would say, the reason I became a chef was because of her cooking, and there is some truth to that. So my journey in food has been incredible, and most of it has been influenced by incredible women in my life. Many great cookbook authors. That's how I found my journey into different kinds of cultures. My current journey has been with some incredible women, and I want to give them a shout out right now, which is Maricela Presilla and, of course, Jessica Harris. Thank you very much. We know the power of a chef and what a chef can do to influence foods, and at this moment in time, it's an important time for us to be reflecting on and thinking about what we can do with the next generation of chefs. We know at the Culinary Institute that we have many chefs that are graduating, going out into a food system that needs some reworking, some tweaking, and to continue to provide unbelievably great tasting food for people. And through the exploration of African cuisines is an avenue that we can take to do this. So I'm going to take you on a quick journey that is going to tell you a little bit about what we have started on at the school, and Scott had mentioned yesterday. A few years back, when we were in the midst of COVID, we went on a journey, and we did a 9-week course which was spearheaded by Dr. Harris and took us through Africa and the diaspora and the effects of the food of the world through that lens. And Dr. Harris gathered together a team of wonderful people that each week gave a presentation to our students and our faculty, and then we entered into the kitchen space to be able to cook the foods of these regions, etc. So right now, I would like to give a shout out to some people that were involved in this journey. So obviously led by Jessica Harris, Chef Pierre Diam, Peter Kim, Federer Teffer, Emma Adamu, Maricela Presilla, Dr. Scott Barton, Von Diaz, Devon Francis, Chef Kevin Mitchell, and Therese Nelson. So that series went on for 3 weeks. It was a great opportunity for our students to get some first exposure. And I just want to step back for 1 minute. And for me, it was a very eye-opening experience. And I think for a few of us in the room, we need to realize that Africa could fit 3 of the United States inside of it. So this is a huge country. So when we were thinking about how, what's that? Continent, that's right. She corrected me yesterday on that too. So 3 Americas, 14 of France would fit inside of Africa. So I think that's a reflection that we have to all think about. So as we started to talk about building this course, obviously a semester-long course, how much could we fit in a semester? The way the layout is, it's for three credit culinary courses. So it's focused on, again, what we do best here at Culinary, which is teach about food and cooking. So we broke this we, being this advisory council led by Jessica, broke this into these 3 courses, Africa, the Matrix, and then coming out of Africa, culinary continuities, transformation from Latin America and the Caribbean, and into the United States. And so currently we have the outline that we have a Histories of Africa Liberal Arts course that would take place, and then there's a capstone course which the students would do a reflection piece, would work on something of interest or a specific region, and take a deeper dive and do a research paper on it. So that's the basic layout of how the semester course. It's in the bachelor's part of the program. It's after they've gone through what is called our culinary core. If you want to learn more about all these things, I'd be happy to talk to you after this session. But this is where we started, and this is where we're going. And so we're currently doing practicals, looking for just the right person, as a chef said to me earlier today, just the right person to teach this course. It has to have someone that's special, strong culinary background with also a passion for the diaspora. This, for us, is an incredible opportunity to take all the students that will be going through our programs and be able to give them the chance to really see the richness of the foods that come out of Africa, how has it affected the world. So this is an unbelievable opportunity for us. And so a special thank you again to Scott and to Maricela and Jessica, sacred sisters to me. They've done an incredible job of helping us to do this program, set it up, get it going. And as I asked Jessica if there was one thing you would want to say about this concentration, and she says that it is going to happen. So that's a wonderful thing. It's a change point for us at the Culinary Institute. And I know that this team of people have worked a long time, many years, for trying to embed and move us forward as an institute to look at Africa more seriously. So it's a very exciting time. So, I know I'm just a commercial break, but the real reason that you're all here is our next session, and so I get the chance to introduce someone extremely wonderful and special who I just listened to an incredible podcast about. Shamila Robinson, she'll moderate the next session and introduce our panel of chefs. Shamila comes to us with incredible food knowledge. Having been a senior content strategist and editor of USA Today and the Atlantic Journal-Constitution, she is currently chair of the journalism committee for the James Beard Foundation and the food editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer. Shamila is a powerful resource for what has happened, what is happening, and what will be happening in food. Please welcome Shamila and our panelists.
Hi, everybody. So excited to be here. Thank you for Culinary Institute. I'm really excited. And for those of you who don't know me, I am an editor for the Philadelphia Inquirer, but I always have a story. And so last night, there were a bunch of people at the bar, of course, and we were sitting around. Realized that we didn't know each other, or we had maybe were followed each other on Instagram, or had never met in person, and so we decided we needed to do a little, and some intros. And one of my favorite intros is always asking how your family is, right? And I was. Martin said yesterday about the way that stories converse around food, how we think about our families, the stories that we tell, and then our culinary language around those dishes. And we got to know so much about each other last night sitting at the bar with just a couple of ideas about how our families cook rice. My mother was a terrible cook, so our rice was rice-a-roni, was a treat. Eastern population outside of the Middle East. So my rice is Italic, and that's a very special dish to me. So we get to know each other by talking about those things. So that's how I'd like to introduce our illustrious panel of some of the most incredible, illustrious minds in contemporary cooking. Diana Tanya, Christy Brown, missionary Greens Freeman, which I love that because I always forget the S. But I would love for you to go and introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your culinary story, your place in the diaspora. What's the story about your place in the diaspora?
Okay, go for it. Hi, I'm Christy Brown. I'm here from Seattle, Washington, and I own a business called That Brown Girl Cooks with my son. That's our catering company, and we also own a restaurant called Communion Restaurant and Bar, and we just opened December of 2020, so I'm a little bit new to this restaurant world, which is exciting. Man, I think that I started cooking because I was greedy. My dad would pick steak on the fireplace, and I would see that fat dripping off of there, and I was so in love with fat at the time. And I was like, hey, Dad, can I eat that rare? And he was like, can I eat it now? It wasn't rare, because I didn't know that. Can I eat it now? And he's like, no, you gotta wait. I was like, well, why? He's like, well, just eat it now. I was like, okay. It was bloody, and it was great, it was fat and hot, and I was like, okay, this is it. And so, honestly, I feel like I've learned so much by being inquisitive. And that's been a large part of my story. And every time I have a new experience, I get to share that on a plate. And I love it so much. I love being here, being a part to tell my story. Thank you.
Hi. Hi everyone, my name is Culinary Freeman. I'm the executive chef of Cadence, located in New York. I specialize in vegan soul food and southern food. I think my food story kind of started very early on, being from Virginia, cooking with my family, always being around so much food, probably too much food. But fast forward in college, I started working at this place called 930 Club, which is a concert venue. And it was just a job, but you know, when you're in college and don't have money, I got the best of both worlds, free food and free concert tickets. So that made me kind of want to learn a bit more about food, and as I started to venture out in DC and kind of learn a bit more about the industry, I took an interest for vegan and plant-based foods. Fast forward, I'm the executive chef of one of the top restaurants in the country, which I'm really proud of. So I think that's like a little touch on my food story.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Diana. I am the chef, owner of Berber Street Food located in New York City. Originally, I'm half Mauritanian and Senegalese, and I moved to New York in 2000 to go to college. And going to college, barely speaking English, I ended up working as a hostess for Jean-Georges and Daniel Boulou. And I fall in love with food so much, I pick up the phone and just tell my mom I would love to be a chef. And I think like that was the biggest slap on the face. Because being African, we're high achiever. Either like you become an engineer, a doctor, or you marry someone in the corporate world. But I took a big leap of faith and ended up going to culinary school. And I had the great opportunity to go back, do fine dining, work for Jean-Georges, Thomas Keller. But being in those kitchens, it was great, but I felt like I could not express myself. And I left fine dining and I traveled intensively, especially in Asia. And I saw a lot of similarity in food, which is street food in Africa. When you go to Hong Kong, Vietnam, India, Mexico, you see people, they cook from the heart, fresh, authentic, and flavorful. So when I came back to New York, I said, I'm going to take a big leap of faith and open Berber Street Food, which is like not cheap food. We do an Afrofusion because I'm very comfortable with French and Asian, but I'm going back to the roots, which is the motherland, and elevate the dishes. Yeah.
So just as we were talking yesterday, as Dr. Harris was talking about, going back to the motherland, going back to these ideas of understanding where our food comes from and understanding our story through where our food comes from. Can you talk a little bit about that journey of getting to plant-based, getting to soul food, getting to street food, from pulling that, how do you tell that narrative of how you got there? I mean, I would love to start with you, Shinari, because you're working on, because yes, she does have one of the most important restaurants in the country, Cadence, plant-based food, but that's also something that we're seeing from all across, from whether that is fast casual up to fine dining, all the Michelin stars. Can you talk about your journey there?
Yes, so I knew that coming into this food industry, I wanted to do something that really focused on the health of us and our community. So I think cooking plant-based foods and just learning about all the effects of vegetables and fruits and herbs and supplements that they can have in your body really got me excited about cooking more than cooking meat or animal products. So I figured as a chef it was really important to share this information, but also to have a restaurant that stuck to these standards. You know, there's a lot of things that we may have to negotiate when you're not in a position of ownership or you're not in a position of certain funds and things of that nature. So as a chef working with my company, that was something that was non-negotiable. I knew that I was going to cook the food that I wanted to cook and that there was going to be a purpose, which was health behind it. So just sticking to that has really made me feel very empowered about the food that I'm cooking. I think ultimately now being in this position, it's more so about unlearning a lot of things that I thought were right growing up, not just about food, but the way of living in our lifestyles and going back, being able to travel to Africa, take cooking classes, getting things from the source, here to say, learning a bit more about the land and farming and agriculture, just really not limiting myself to just being in the kitchen, but learning about food from all aspects and all angles, and learning about different cultures as well.
What's your culinary vision? How do you take ownership of that vision?
Well, I think it's interesting, having been in the industry for 30 years. When I started, I was so excited to share my story about my food and where I came from. But at that time, it was not acceptable. It wasn't acceptable to be a Black chef and cook soul food in our eyes because there was some kind of shame to that. And so it was like, it's automatically, even today, there's still the assumption, oh, you cook soul food. That means that we're gonna have fried chicken. That means we're gonna have greens. Like that, there's just these things, these standards, and it felt degrading, I think, at that time. We had our own personal pride, but professional pride was something different, and you would see like a lot of Black chefs doing a lot of fusion cooking because they wanted to be able to prove that they could do both and. And so I think that is an interesting space that I come out of, especially being in Seattle. Seattle's not known for its large Black community, so I think that. But again, like being curious is just a part of who I am. And so my dad, like we love meat and we love vegetables. And it was, it's like, okay, well, how does that kind of pan out? We weren't heavy starch people, so it's like, so he gravitated towards a lot of Asian cooking, which was perfect for me. Like I was like, okay, fried rice, let's go. You're from Kansas City, it's not a lot going on down there. But when we moved to Seattle, right, and it's just all these beautiful farm stands, all these fresh foods and stuff, and most of the time, particularly in the areas that we were living in, there were specific cultures represented, Southeast Asian cultures, Chinese, Japanese, and that kind of thing. And one of the things I know for sure is that we are more alike than different. And so for me, when it came to my food, it's like, okay, I will go into the market and I'd see black-eyed peas in the Asian market. Oh, what's going on here? Let's try that out. Let's try to see how we can match up. And I really feel like that is the birthplace of Seattle Soul for me, is like being able to honor where I come from, that rich roots, and then also where I am now, being influenced by so many different neighborhoods that I've lived in throughout Seattle. So that really is like the culture bed of why I do what I do, and I just look for the similarities, and it really comes across well on the plate, I think.
Talk about how I mean, you talked a little bit about that, being able to have that vision of taking, okay, I know French, I know Asian, I want to do the dishes that I love. Now, how did you take ownership of that?
So basically, it's funny, spending a lot of summer in Bali cooking, people used to point me out because of my color, and going to the night market in Vietnam and to ask them, please, can I just cook for you? I don't need you to pay me. Then I realized I saw a lot of similarity, like I told before. And when I came back, even I'm African, I never felt I was African because I really didn't embrace my culture. And coming from Mauritania, even being African, a lot of people will tell me, you're from Mauritania, where's Mauritania? People think usually I'm from Mauritius or India. So it was time for me, and I had something I promised to myself, to put my country on the map and also show the value of Africa, the motherland. So I went back every summer back home, spending time in the Sahara, doing like campfire, cooking camel meat, which is like taking people out of their comfort zone. Yeah. And what I do in my restaurant, even my background is fine dining, I wanted to express myself. And the only way I can do that is like throwing whatever I have today and say, let's make peanut butter sauce, which is my favorite, let's make okra, let's make black eyed pea fritters, suya. So my menu change every 3 months, because Africa is not a country, it's a continent with 52 countries. So what I do every 3 months, I try to feature, like today we say, okay, we're gonna focus on North Africa. And 3 months we're gonna focus in Kenya, East, West, and North, and doing a fusion. And when I opened it, I had no idea how people will embrace the concept. I was scared. Being a black chef, being a female chef in the West Village, I had no idea. But I had a big leap of faith, and sadly my parents passed away. I wish they were here to see where I am today, because they thought, excuse, like I am a failure, the fact I wanted to be a chef, because it did not exist being a chef. But today, I am very proud where I am, and the vision of putting African food on the map and reinventing street food. And my biggest vision is like to find a place, African food in the fine dining arena.
Because another one of the themes of this conference is about reclaiming, reinventing, rethinking. You've reclaimed a bit of your culture. Shinari, you've reclaimed a lot of our culture that we don't really talk about. Like so many of our cultures are plant forward, often vegetarian or vegan. Being able to reclaim the ideas or rethink ideas that we had because we had to uphold traditions. What else do we need to let go of to keep putting these new words on the map, new countries, introducing people to these concepts?
To me, it's just to stop apologizing. I'm done with that. I'm just gonna keep moving forward, and when you sit on my table, I want my food to speak to you. Not telling me it's African food, I have to explain to you why you should have it. Yeah, just be authentic and do what we have to do and move forward.
Yeah, that's on that, Shinari.
There's no traditions I would take away, because I think tradition kind of helps tell a story about our food. I think for me, I would just kind of like add to that and use some of these traditions as a base and kind of build on top of that. I think that's what I do with my food. You know, there's a lot of things that aren't traditionally vegan within our culture, but using that as a base and maybe taking out pork out of the collard greens or something and putting like a chickpea miso broth. We're just trying things a little bit differently and building on top of these traditions. So I wouldn't take anything away.
But is there, but what you're doing is you're rethinking, right? The miso broth, the idea of fermentation, adding flavor. Can you talk a little bit about your thought process around, like, what about those dishes, those traditional dishes, and some things that one thing I love that you cook, because I always have a story, is that she has a wrap that is collards and it is soaked in this broth, but it's a succotash, right? And so there's succotash in the middle. Can you talk about reclaiming that dish in a way that is plant-based?
So for me, I'm from Virginia, so I used to have collard greens with pork, ham. I think my grandma would put like fat back in them sometimes, all types of things that I no longer eat. So for me, it's kind of thinking about those childhood memories, those flavors that my grandmother used to cook with, that my family still cooks with, but making it approachable for people that may not want to have meat, maybe cooking in a more plant-based tradition. So I think just taking the animal products out, but keeping those I guess, family recipes as a base and just kind of building on top of that and taking a few things out and adding, like, my culinary background is the direction that I'm going with food.
Where do you reclaim it, Christy?
I think I'm just reclaiming my voice, right? Like one of the things, they tell you not to read the reviews. And I read them and I respond. So lately, we've been having this conversation because, we've been getting so much press and it's been so beautiful. And people from all over the country, we're a destination place, so people come. And they're coming from the South and they're curious. I'm thinking, and I always tell people that Black people that go to Seattle, like, you didn't move here for the same kind of experience that you had back home, right? You're here now, we're in Seattle. Like, it's gonna be different. So I think that for me, it's like, that family tradition, that's super important. Like, I definitely want to uphold that. That's made me be what I am, but now, like, I'm different. I'm 52, I got something to say. Like, I've lived in Renton, I've lived in Issaquah, I've lived in Marion. And all of these are little subset cities, but the difference is it's like different cultures migrate to different places, and I want to tell that story of what it meant for me to be in Issaquah. And if you know anything about Seattle, like, we were really probably the only Black family, and it was like, what did it mean to go to the grocery store and find things that represented something I was even remotely familiar with, and how did I make that work? And you have to make it work, because that's such a huge thing. Like, we make hummus out of black-eyed peas, and that just came about. I loved my chef at the time, first Black female chef I'd had. I wanted to impress her, and I was like, let me think about something that's interesting that I can make. She wanted me to make a vegetarian dish. I was like, okay. So I made a roasted vegetable sandwich with black-eyed pea hummus, and it was just so cutting edge at the time, but I just thought, wow, again, one more like the different. How could this work? It's a pea that cooks smoothly. When you cook it too much, it turns into a sauce. Like, I can incorporate oil into that and make it into something smooth and beautiful. And I just think that, like, being able to give myself permission to say who I am on a plate is really a part of my journey. And so now when I read the reviews and people are like, well, we came all the way here from Atlanta for soul food. I'm like, well, why did you do that? That's not what I said. I said we did Seattle Soul. Seattle Soul is a story about what makes Seattle soulful for me. And I want to share that with you. So I think that that's really important to reinforce that belief every way through it, from the service when you walk through the door to your service while you're there and everywhere in between.
I think that's beautiful, because we did migrate to all of these different places from all over the world, and the story does change. We know that the stories are the same. As you're talking, and you're talking about breaking down black-eyed peas, it made me think of acarajé. And that was like the first time I had had acarajé in Bahia, and thinking about, this is a good way for me to eat black-eyed peas, because where I'm from, you don't cook black-eyed peas on New Year's Day, and so I'm like, I was thinking about what we did. And so these traditions, like being able to start a new language or introduce people to other kinds of experiences from all over the globe, I think is really important. And I think, Diana, you were talking, as we were talking last night, I was really inspired by a lot of what you were saying of, I speak Arabic and I speak French, and I had to come in and translate all of these things and learn English as well. But your plates are now telling a whole new story.
Yes, because at Berber Street Food, when you walk in the door, it's not just an exchange of money or food. We educate you. We welcome you with love, and you live with love. So some of the articles, which I really like, because I hardly read about myself, And Anna Goldfield said the chef of Berber Street Food has the West Village wrapped around her finger, which is like very big. And I own it because when people enter, I say to my counter boys and everybody who works there, let's kill them with kindness. Because in Africa, number one thing when you're entering somebody's house, before they feed you, is the smile and the kindness. Then the food. When it's the funeral, it's food, how we comfort people. When somebody gives birth, it's food. When you celebrate, it's food. So when you have good food, you have a warm hospitality, there's nothing else left. And then I think during pandemic, it shows humanity should shine through us. And I was thinking, am I going to reopen my restaurant? Because everybody at home was baking, cooking. That's the way we were comforting each other. So basically, it's been a very long journey for me. And I couldn't ask for a better, and sometimes I don't even know how I do it, but I feel like there's a force greater than me that pushes me every day.
It's so amazing to me how soul food is so treasured in our culture.
Yeah.
And yet, when you think about it professionally, how there's that kind of that shame kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, for sure. That's a part of that reclaiming.
Can you say more about?
Because I just when I was scared. I was scared to tell my parents that I was going to be a cook. Even though they forced me to do that, I was like, okay, I gotta follow my heart. This is what I love. Because you didn't know, it's like this idea of being a servant, right?
Yeah.
That's not what your parents want. They want you to go. And all my God, I come from 3 generations of college graduated people, so then, I was like, okay, I gotta prove that I'm gonna make this work. I went, and the funny story is I went to visit the CIA in New York because I didn't think that my community college culinary degree was enough. And I was so happy to tell my staff last night. I went, and they said, well, you got to start all over, right? And I was like, well, I don't start over. And I was like, then it had me really think about, am I good enough just as I am?
Is that something that we need to think about of how we talk about our parents, talk to our parents, or talk to, within our cultures, interculture, the idea of being a chef and kind of taking out the professionalism or the, the idea of chefs are business owners, right? But we don't talk about it that way, and our parents wanted us to be these different things. Yet, chefs, and also the celebratizing of chefs, but we don't talk about it within our cultures in those terms. How do you wrestle with that, and are those things that we need to change the language around how we speak about our professions? I'd love to hear from Shinari, because you look like you're thinking about it real hard. Okay. It's okay.
I would say, I think definitely times are changing. The celebrity situation is interesting. It's interesting. But the thing is, of course, it makes sense, though. I think, honestly, when I think about the art that we produce, the way that the work that we put into it, I think it does deserve, even though it's odd, and when people know you, they've never had your food, they're excited to meet you, but at the same time, that's a great honor. And I think that's long overdue, and that makes it a lot easier to have a conversation. And, it's a great time to rejuvenate this industry with people to understand, like, this is artistry. This is not just slaving over a hot stove. Like, there's so much to this, to be able to balance that business acumen with the being able to present it, you know, and then the connection to the land. I mean, there's just so many different places you can go with this to make it be something to uplift and encourage so many people to come back to it.
Diana?
What should I say about that? To me, basically, it's very nice to know, like, you get all these great articles, people talks about you, but at the end of the day, it's just doing what you love to do, to go with the heart and passion. Because I wouldn't see myself behind a desk or being a diplomat like my dad. I really wanted to feed people. I think that's my journey here. And it's great because right now my family, when they talk about me, my aunt even will go to print out articles to show people who I am today. So it's kind of trendy in Africa to say you're a chef because of Top Chef, Bravo, what's happening. But at the end of the day, I'm not doing it for fame. And the money wife, that's true, but if you're going in the industry to make money as a chef, you will have to wait for a long time because it's not happening right now. So basically, you really need to do it with love. And then, why are you doing this? So I'm happy for where I am right now, and let's see where the journey will take me, but I couldn't ask for a better journey right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also about representation as well. Like, a lot of times we don't see ourselves, you know, on TV with the TV shows, or, you know, I don't think when I was, well, I'm 29, but when I used to, like, watch TV, I never saw anyone that looked like me. So I never really could see myself as a chef. But when I moved to New York, and I met all these chefs, and I started learning about, you know, all the people that have been doing this for so long, and they're just not celebrated on that level. So I think in terms of family and how they can deal with our industry or us becoming celebrity chefs or things like that, I think they just need to see it in order to celebrate it a bit more. But it's great to have these conversations and these circles of chefs that we could celebrate amongst ourselves, and then kind of bring that back to our families to show them what we're about.
Yeah, that's another kind of reclaiming. And I think that in order to be in this business, and I think chefs and journalists have similar afflictions, or in similar kinds of roles. It's demanding, low paid, workaholic, 24/7. You're always thinking about what the next story is, or being consistent in the way that we present stories, and in making sure that the language is precise the same way that your dishes have to be precise every single day. But it requires coming from a place of joy, and being able to see, you know, when you see the paper come out, you see the stories come out, or when the thing goes up and it posts, there's this light that goes on that I think is very similar when the plate goes out and you see people smiling and they know that you're enjoying it. So I would love to hear about part of your journey and, like, what you're looking for joy. I think a lot of what you're seeing, and we will continue to see in this conference, is being able to bring the joy of the diaspora into our food. So I'm going to talk a little bit about joy.
Ooh, my favorite subject. Oh my goodness. I think that one of my biggest joys right now is that my assistant Arvin and my sous chef Lynn is here, and that is very intentional. Like you said, growing up in this industry, I didn't see very many people that looked like me. My dad, he was like, okay, you know, we'll find something, and so he got me a book with all the great chefs, and there was only one black chef, and that was Patrick Clark. And I was so grateful to just know about him. It was just like everything I could find. You know, this is car cowboy days, so, you know, I'm looking and searching, and it just wasn't there. And, you know, just so grateful to be in in this age now where we have such meaningful connections and we have so many people we can look up to that have laid the groundwork for where we are, but to be able to be that stand for my staff. And we have a large, pretty large staff. We have about 50 people at Communion and about 20 people at that Brown Girl, and large, most are brown, black and brown. And to have them like come seek me out because they had heard about me and be able to be approachable enough for them to learn from me and to be able to share all of these resources and opportunities with them, that is so much joy because then I know that what I'm doing will not end with me. And it's just the beginning for so many people, and that's a big, huge deal.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I find joy in community. I find joy knowing that I'm cooking in an era with so many amazing chefs. You know, you read about a lot of different eras in art, music, things that have happened in the past, and to know that someone like Nina Simone knew James Baldwin, and it's like we're gonna look back on this time and be like, oh, like I know this chef, and like, oh, I used to cook with them, and we'll be in the history books. So that, but also seeing other people that look like me win. That really brings me joy. I was nominated for a Michelin star this year. I didn't get it, but two of my friends did. You know, and that's like really exciting to still be able to support them. It's like when one of us wins, it feels like all of us win. So I think just being able to witness that is very joyful.
Well, I find joy in feeding people, and I'm so grateful and just so happy to represent my continent, and especially to put Mauritania on the map. And doing street food and being on the Michelin guide, it's like, wow, this can happen. If the Michelin guide can happen, so basically there's no limitation in life. And we have to aim higher, and we can get there. We're not there yet, but definitely we can get there.
We're moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful to be able to even be at a conference like this and talking about Mauritania, talking about plant-based, talking about Seattle Soul. We're adding new words to the vocabulary, our common culinary vocabulary, and making sure that there are people that we're making room for more people, for more ideas. So I'm really excited to think about the future and the chefs that are going to come behind you, that there's going to be a curriculum that we'll be talking about and continuing to make sure that the Mauritanians on the map, that plant-based soul is sustainable, that Seattle soul becomes something that we all talk about. So I want to conclude with something that's a little bit upbeat. What's a unit of measurement that you think that people should know? Like a non-traditional unit of measurement. Like, you know, I love like saying, oh, I need to add, 50 lemon pieces of garlic. Or things like, the things that we say that we start to think about, how we put our love, our joy, and our culture into our food. What is something that you want people to be saying about your food?
Razzle dazzle. I was still this from Chef Lynn, because she always says that, but it's like, it's just the right measurement of something that's going to make that thing pop.
Razzle.
Razzle.
Can I give you two?
Yes, please.
My first one is taste like technique. Second one is seasoning. Season till your ancestors tell you to stop.
Listen, season till your ancestors tell you to stop.
Well, mine will be inviting everybody on the table. Because in Africa, when we eat together. Yeah.
have a little wrestle. Seasoned until your ancestors tell you to stop.
Yeah.
What a wonderful way to conclude a conversation about what is our culinary language, how do we change that? Christy Brown, Shinari Freeman, Diana Tandia, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all of you. On this conversation, thank you again to, I want to give a couple of shout outs again to the Culinary Institute of America for bringing us all together, their strategic initiatives group, Rupa Bhattacharya and Jennifer Brockner, thank you so much for bringing us together, and especially to Dr. Harris and Therese Nelson and the rest of the advisory council and all of the sponsors who made your support, have made it possible for us all to be here. So thank you. Think about your culinary unit of measurement is going to be tell your stories, share them more broadly. Thank you.
So thank you, Diana, Christy, and Shinari for being here. This was a really wonderful conversation. And thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories, you know, your successes and your struggles, and, you know, congratulations to you all on all of your success and the success to come. Thank you, Jamila. You are a great moderator. We knew you would be. And so we've got a couple of minutes. We will be here, and the next session will start at noon. And so if you just want to sit tight, this might be, with our conferences, if you've been with us before, you know, we keep you going and moving. It's very structured. So if you just want to sit and just enjoy the next like 5 minutes, we'll be starting soon with Suzanne Barr. We'll bring Therese Nelson back. And Suzanne Barr will do a demo and talk about her book, My Ackee Tree. So thank you, and hopefully, you know, like this is, I just feel just been a really dynamic conference so far, and we're really just grateful to have you all here, to have our presenters here, and we look forward to more, so thank you. Hello, hello. Welcome again. I'm just here actually to welcome my colleague Therese Nelson back. She's going to introduce this session. We're really excited to have Edith Godet and Suzanne Barr here, and always, Therese, it's always lovely to see your face. So I'm going to step out of the way.
Hey everybody, this has been so dope. I am watching the session, the general sessions that are streamed to everyone around the world and just getting my life this whole time. I would say I was really gratified that we were able to do last session. You'll notice, I felt like when I took this gig, we were going to break worlds of flavor because a lot of the ways in which we organize the schedule were really about ideating the voices we wanted to have and the way we wanted them to be able to show up. And so last session was really important to me as a thematic idea to sort of center disproportionately women-run businesses that are thriving, that are creating beautiful language around the work they do and have such clear and dynamic practices, right? And so they're all women who are operating in the brick and mortar space, which we know is a complicated kind of calculus these days. The second half of that coin, though, is the sort of non-traditional space and sort of all of these interesting, innovative, creative spaces that chefs, disproportionately Black chefs, have been utilizing to really tell stories in beautiful ways. And so when I think of these alternative spaces, I think primarily one of the first names that comes to mind is Suzanne Barr, who I've been a great admirer for many, many years. She was a very easy and enthusiastic guest when we invited her. Her work around Canada and throughout North America has been some of my deepest inspiration, watching young Black women like me moving through the world and just crushing the game. You will have an opportunity to get her book signed, her memoir/cookbook, my Aki Tree. And so to have a space where we can sort of think about and talk about the alchemy and calculus of culinary language outside of the brick and mortar space was the second half of this sort of duo of joint sessions. In conversation with her, moderating is Edric Goudian, who is another brilliant woman who is dismantling our thinking around Western dining. Based out of Detroit, you'll get to hear from Edric later on in the program, talking about her culinary work. But right now she is teeing up our amazing time with Chef Suzanne Barr. So get your lives.
What up, though? What up? Okay, so y'all know how we, all right, so so like, all right, for those that don't, what up, though? What up, though? All right, thank you. So I have the pleasure of introducing Suzanne Barr, who just, one, we noticed that we kind of look alike, so we're officially sis. But just really starting this really beautiful relationship that I think will continue. Suzanne Barr has become one of the most respected and beloved chefs for her flair for fresh comfort food, and also her passion for local community, food security, and advocacy. Chef Suzanne's career as a chef, author, social activist, and culinary mentor is inspired by both her mother and father, two novice chefs who instilled a lifelong passion to cherish the role that food plays in both nourishing the body as well as the soul and the spirit. Chef's expansive culinary career includes her role as the inaugural chef in residence at the Gladstone Hotel in Toronto, Canada, where she resides. She's owner of the former Saturday Dinette and head chef and owner of True Diner, a diner concept that pays homage to the sites of many civil rights sit-ins and the history of the diner in breaking down segregation. What is most impressive, however, is Suzanne's relentless advocacy for food security, marginalized communities, mental health, pay equity, nutrition literacy, and food source sustainability.
I don't even know how she has time to do all of that, but some kind of way she finds a way. Her truest form of self-expression is empowering and mentoring other women chefs. Earlier this year, Suzanne published My Aki Tree, a chef's memoir of finding home in the kitchen, which takes readers on a personal journey of food, family, soul-searching, self-discovery, and even motherhood that really leads Suzanne home in the kitchen closer to her Jamaican heritage. Suzanne's food philosophy is simple: to create nutritious, flavorful, and comforting foods made with local, accessible ingredients. Please join me in welcoming Chef Suzanne Barr, sis.
We gotta let it play out for a second, because those that know Sister Nancy, but thank you all. It's a true honor to be here and to share in this conversation with this very talented sister friend of mine. First and foremost, I'd like to thank and celebrate Evelyn, Eunice, Nicey. These are my grandmothers who I am currently standing on their shoulders today in this space with you all. This is my celebration and acknowledging how they have been able to preserve their work and their love of teaching me food, my food, Jamaican food, and how important it is to me to now be able to share that with everyone. So, on that note, we're making some food.
We are making some food. So, your memoir,
Yeah.
My Aki Tree. I've read it immediately. And what I got from your memoir, it's not a cookbook, it is a memoir. It felt like a love letter. And it felt like a love letter to your journey, to your Jamaican heritage, and to your family.
100%.
What were you going for? I wanna know.
To be honest with you, it really kind of started with my writing partner, Suzanne Hancock. We at first had a conversation over a podcast. She has this podcast called Sunday Night Dinner, and she invited me to come in and talk about my connection to food, and my connection to food was my mother and making her apple pie. And so at that time, I was at the Gladstone as the executive chef, and I had been invited in to come and create a menu, and I called that menu The Rite of Passage. That was a love letter to my mother of describing where I had been going, what my life was like. I lost my mother at the age of 23. She passed away from pancreatic cancer, and I was her caretaker. And the one thing that I will pull from all of this is that I didn't know how to cook for her in the state of understanding that she nurtured me my whole life, and here I am not able to cook for her. How is this possible? She couldn't eat the foods that she knew that she grew up eating, and I was missing that connection. And so this love letter was attributed to my time and creating, and so that menu is what we presented to our publishing company. And then when they said to us, this is a wonderful book proposal, thank you so much, but we actually want your story. And that is when my eyes kind of went sideways, and I was like, what? I've not unpacked that yet. Like, I'm still, and I think that's kind of where the journey kind of then went, and asking a lot of questions, going back to like my aunts and uncles and asking about my mother, because she passed away when I was so young. A lot of those questions I never had a chance to really talk to her about. So learning about her, learning about the journey, learning about who I was and what my time spent in New York as a chef, as a private chef, to then moving back to Canada and spending 10 years there with my family. It's still, to me, kind of a shock that I was able to put that body of work, because it was in the midst of all of opening a new restaurant, raising my son, and then going through a pandemic. So it was a lot.
So can we say this book was, putting it together was therapeutic?
100%. It still is. I mean, we're here talking about, our stories, and I think we've been hearing that from everyone that has been before us and that will continue to share their life stories. The work that we put in as chefs, it's very committed. It's very keep your head down, dive in, get deep, get personal. And, a lot of times that wasn't what we were told as chefs coming out of culinary school or coming out of these kitchens. We were told that make our food and that's it. But I think what I try to make a very important fact is that no matter who you are, whatever kitchen you're cooking in, always make sure you're telling your story on the plate. And that's exactly what I was able to do with this menu and these dishes that we are talking about today.
Awesome. All right, well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
All right, so first, what do we have?
So we're going to start with pepper shrimp. So those that have, raise your hand if you've been to Jamaica before. Okay, so good amount of folks have been there. So in Jamaica, there are parishes, as we would say, neighborhoods in America. So my mom is from St. Elizabeth Parish, and St. Elizabeth is kind of in the center of the island. And there is something that's very well known. It is this particular dish called pepper shrimp. And where you find them is like they're typically sold in plastic bags on the roadside. And who's eating them? It's anyone that's passing by. The shrimp are coming from the Black River, which is the longest river in Jamaica. And this is where my mom grew up. So this particular dish is where she's from, her great-grandmother, her grandmother. They would make this, sell it on the street side. So this is now my interpretation of pepper shrimp. Yeah. So we've...
No, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
it just
that's okay.
reminds me of, so I'm from South Louisiana.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of, it's just like we basically all grew up the same. Like we really do all have the same childhood in some way, shape, or form. And so it reminds me of, we always had like, the shrimp man that would go and, go shrimping, and then he would put the shrimp in a cooler and he would drive down the street selling shrimp that he just, he went and got. And he would have a scale hanging from the back of the truck, right, with the cooler, so he could weigh it. So, you didn't, of course, my grandfather's shrimp, but you didn't have to go in. That wasn't something that you got from a grocery store. That was something that you got from the man in the back of his truck, right, the cooler, that he just went and fished, so.
Yeah, and what's so unique about both of our stories is that shrimp being this like essential part of the livelihood of those that were from that region. Yeah. And so, today we're using large prawns with heads on, and I advise 100% to do that always, because the real jewel of this particular dish is in the head. And tomorrow you will all be, for those that will be with us tomorrow, I'll be featuring this in the marketplace, so you'll be able to enjoy the head and the full body. So we've got our prawns here. Now, with the magic of what we do as chefs, we've already been able to blanch and shock them. So we initially poached them and cooked them in a court bouillon, which is a very classic French, very aromatic broth. So that is filled with fennel and celery and carrots and fresh thyme, of course, Scotch bonnet, of course, bay leaves. These are all the flavors that really kind of bring about our food, this dish. This is all about warming spices, spices that really kind of mimic, that place and the flavor of what our essence is all about, which is some spice. Yeah.
It gives you comfort.
100%, 100%. So pepper shrimp then, after it's then poached, we've got these beautiful pearl pink shrimp that are now ready to be prepared and mixed with our sauce. So the sauce itself that goes with the pepper sauce is all about garlic. It's all about achote, which is also paprika, which is a seed that's been pounded down, red like the sand in that particular region in Jamaica. In addition to that, we also have lime juice, we have lemon juice, white pepper. This combination of flavor and spices comes from also, of course, some of my techniques and traveling and living in many different places and bringing them together. And I wanted to create a nice thick sauce that could really talk about how rich these flavors are. So we've got our sauce already made here in our bottle with all of those flavors. perfect accompanied with this particular shrimp that we featured actually at the restaurant in the Gladstone was some grilled pineapple. So I'm going to get going on the grilled pineapple. I think that's right about that time. So, but what you can do for me is you can mix the pepper sauce with the shrimp.
Yeah.
Does that work? Okay.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
All right.
And here's the pepper sauce. And you're just going to glaze it, just make it
All right.
delicious and succulent.
Yes, yes. Do you need this cutting board for the pineapple?
I do need this cutting board for the
All right.
pineapple. Thank you. Here you go, chef. So I think, you know, for me, it's interesting because pineapple, I'm actually really allergic to pineapple. So I'm actually going to use gloves, but I felt like I really wanted to kind of present this in the way that I originally visioned this dish, which was, you know, having this beautiful fresh fruit. And I think that's what we do so well in the Caribbean, is that we celebrate the flavors of the country. We celebrate the flavors by always bringing a bit of the fruitness, the freshness, with something that is grilled, something that is fried, something that is roasted, something that is smoked on pepper, pimento wood. These are the flavors, these are the essence of what makes Jamaica so beautiful and, you know, really the Caribbean. And, you know, there's a lot of conversation about the fact that Jamaica, much like the Caribbean, is not a monolith. We are not just based off of one type of food. We are based off of a collection of so many flavors. We are way more than what I think sometimes people like to put us in a little, thank you, chef.
Another box?
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your, so this is, you know, traditional, but then also bringing in some of those different techniques and things that you've just learned in your travels and, of course, in your culinary journey. Can you talk a little bit more about where your culinary journey has taken you?
Yeah, 100%. So you know, after living in New York and working in film and television for about almost 15 years, I was an executive producer at MTV Networks, managing a small team, handling a very different experience than what I would step away from. And that, to me, was kind of a point in my life where I realized that I needed something else. I was not being fulfilled. Started out as an artist, went to art school, dropped out of art school. I think some people can relate to that. And when I left art school, I think I always knew that art would be a part of my life, but what is important to me is how do I create? And I think it took me a long time to understand that as a chef, I am an artist.
Yeah,
you know, I couldn't, that compute, it just didn't make sense to me.
It was like you left one art school to go to another art school.
Exactly. So while in working full time, I then enrolled at the Natural Gourmet Institute, which was based in New York City. And while I was there, I learned about understanding healing art of food and food preparation. So that's really what I wanted, and that's what I was received from the great, wonderful work that I did at the school. And I think from there, it then took me to Hawaii. From Hawaii, it brought me back to New York. And then from Hawaii, I spent 2 years in Paris, working in Paris, and then I went to Nice. You know, all of these travels makes it connect me to why my ancestors, we are nomadic people as Caribbean people. Colonization moved my family from a very small island in the Caribbean all the way across the water to England. And once we got there, my family began to break down. It took 8 years for my grandfather to bring the whole family, and there was 12 of them, over from Jamaica to England. And every generation, every year after that, I think it became a bit more of us having to hold on to our history, holding on to our past, creating these traditions, and then finally making our way back to Canada. So all of that to say that my journey through all of these cities led me then back to Canada in 2013 when I moved back to Canada, and that's when I opened my first restaurant in 2014.
Oh my God.
So it's been a
That's-
lot. It's
that's-
a lot to, when people say that's a journey, I'm like, oh yeah, but it's wonderful to share, and I feel blessed, and I understand, you know, the privilege and the sacrifices that my family has made for me to be able to do this, and so I support them by honoring this tradition of making food for y'all today.
Yes. All right, so back to,
We're gonna grill some pineapple.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got tongs, we've got a nice hot grill. Chef, is it time for this hood? So there will be a bit of a noise from the hood, so bear with us, but don't worry. A little smoke won't hurt nobody. So we've also over here prepared a lime butter and using coconut oil. Coconut oil is something that I use a lot from doughs to sauteing to making this beautiful, sweet, but very acidic flavoring. So we're gonna go down first on the grill. I'm gonna brush a little bit of oil on the grill so it doesn't actually stick, because there is a lot of sugar in the pineapple. So when using any type of grills, you can either always give a nice little spray, and you'll get a little smoke. Don't worry about that. Thank you, Chef.
Thanks, Chef.
And then we're just gonna go down. The beauty of this part is all about getting beautiful grill marks. I'm gonna just put a couple on now.
Miss Allergic to pineapples, you need some gloves.
I just was thinking that. It's not too, it's definitely not, I don't need any shots. So
Okay.
the one thing that my first chef taught me was let food cook. And
Yes.
so rather than, if you're ever at a grill, whether it's in your home, outdoor, wherever, you gotta let food cook. You gotta let food just caramel, you gotta let it do its job. And that is reacting with the fat, with the sugars, creating a caramelization, and that's what we're looking for.
And the ancestors gonna tell you when
And
to
the
touch it anyway,
ancestors-
so, right?
Listen, there's no measurement in this. There's no I think a lot of my cooking comes from a space of comfort and thinking about how would I like something to taste and how would I like something to play. And sometimes I dream a lot about food.
Oh, yes, a lot comes to me in dreams too. But I also remember you talking about your dad and how he is the best cook in the house, and also what he uses as measurements, right? It's like the palm of your hand is a measurement, right?
Right here. This centerpiece, and I could never, ever, and probably will never, ever really understand what he makes oxtail and what he goes through the process, because for my dad, and for probably many people, it's all about the visual, it's all about the feeling, it's all about the intention, it's all about the emotion. And I think that's what happens a lot of the times that I can remember of watching my mom and my dad cook, because they were wicked in the kitchen, my mom and my dad. And my dad still to this day, not as much as he used to cook, but he still throws down. And my dad was the one that made things because he wanted to create an amazing shrimp dish. So he'd take prawns and he'd crack them, split them, butterfly them open. Then he'd take some crab, which he was also allergic to, and he put crab meat down the center of these prawns.
Growing theme here, y'all. Okay. All right.
Well, if you see my dad and you see me, we look very similar.
Okay.
I get my looks from my dad, and I get my love and tradition of cooking from my mom. I mean, I'd like to think that.
But your dad is still the best cook in the house?
He is, he really is, and I'll take any credit when he gives it, if he's celebrating me doing anything right, but yeah. It doesn't always come easy, so we're just gonna, accept that. So, as you can see, we've got this beautiful grill lines, and this is what we're looking for. This to me is like awakening those flavors, and that is what is perfectly paired with these pepper shrimp, because pepper shrimp, there's 10 different seasoning flavors that's building from the foundation, using that court bouillon to really kind of cook and poach and prepare these shrimp for their final stage, which is then being glazed over, marinated in this deep, rich, flavorful, succulent, juicy, acidic but garlicky sauce, the pepper sauce. Everybody's grandma, everybody's mom, everybody's uncle has their version of pepper sauce.
Right.
As you know, everybody has a version of any of these sauces, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you handle shrimp when you're making prawns and such?
I mean, it's just again, in South Louisiana, everyone having their version of gumbo, right? There's how everyone does things differently, or, dirty rice, or jambalaya. It's, there's the basics in it, right? They're all kind of using the same ingredients, but that feeling of, the measurement, the palm of the hand, those are going to be where the differences lie.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's this particular, again, this is coming from that region, but I think that I've had conversations with people that were like, I went to Jamaica one time and I went to the middle quarters for this particular dish. So the next time you go to Jamaica, make it an effort. Don't just have jerk chicken, look for pepper shrimp, because it is there, and it's something that you'll never forget, and it's quite special. And actually another story that I was reading about is that it's actually not shrimp that they're catching in the Black River. It's actually crawfish, which even gives it even more. Exactly.
All for that. Okay.
I think this pineapple looks just about ready to get
They're beautiful.
right?
Yes.
Glazed over with some of that lime butter. So I'm just going to transfer it onto this plate. And so in this wonderful, delicious butter here, so this is the coconut oil with some brown sugar, some lime juice, lime zest, some nutmeg, of course, because I feel like nutmeg, allspice is something we use a lot.
Yes.
It's like the foundation of our food. It really is.
Yeah.
Jerk sauce has it. Even when we make our own curry patter, it's in curry, it's in our sweets, it's in our savory, it's in everything. So we've got our prawns now wonderfully dressed with that. Do you want to brush on some of this beautiful lime butter?
Yeah.
Chef, do we have I can use this one here. You can
Now
use
is that going on the?
right on the pineapple there. And then I'll get our platter. And we'll just swap.
So I'm just brushing it on.
Yeah. So now we're just gonna glaze this, and I'm gonna grab this piece here. And so again, this is something that we have in the very cold shrimp. We've got these grilled, beautiful pieces of pineapple. I think you should go for it.
All right, there we go.
And then right on top, we've got our prawns, our pepper shrimp. And we'll garnish with some flowers, because why not? We are in the Caribbean. I've taken you guys all back to Jamaica. Actually, I'm gonna use that.
Okay.
And I really like these kind of just sitting right on top of the pineapple. So you can have a little bit of, the heads may fall off, don't worry, that's okay. You can always suck them later.
Yes.
And then also, don't be scared to go with extra sauce.
Oh,
It's a little
so
messy,
good.
but I think when you're eating, you want to experience.
We talked about that, right? Like eating with your hands. Like how just beautiful that is.
Yeah.
It definitely makes me feel like I'm in the islands.
Yeah. It's like if
So vibrant.
exactly, the vibrant colors, the music, it speaks to so much about Jamaican culture, and I think that it's a celebration of Afro-Caribbean food right now, and I'm very excited to be a part of that conversation, which, it's an honor to kind of continue to share with other chefs in the U.S. on that, so.
All right.
So I think we
I'm
have
going
to.
to get that once we finish this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're moving steady onto something that is truly a foundational treat, patties. Patties are something that you sell on the street corners. You can find them at a pastry shop. You can find them at an Italian bakery, at a pizza, like anywhere, pretty much in most cities. And so for me, when I decided to create this recipe for the book, I didn't want to just do the traditional. I wanted to almost kind of level it up in a most righteous and honoring way by taking oxtail that we have already here pre-roasted. And when we roasted that, we seared it off beautifully with some salt and pepper, very basic sear. And then in that pan, we then came in with a bit of some tomato paste, a lot of aromatics. We've got some garlic, we've got Scotch bonnet, we've got thyme. I already have it pulled off of the meat. I'm gonna do a quick demo on how to just like kind of make it flavorful. So being that oxtail is something that we have in a brown sauce with sometimes a bit of butter peas is something that you'll see a lot. This to me was like, I could put the butter beans in here, but I really wanted to kind of keep it very true to the meat. I always feel like when I get oxtail, there's never enough. I'm like,
there is never enough oxtail.
there's never enough oxtail. So
There's definitely never enough oxtails.
So I'm like, how do I create, put this patty recipe and really kind of allow the oxtail to really be the star of this dish. And so that's exactly what we did.
See, that's not even enough oxtails.
I know, I'm gonna go.
Not enough oxtails. Now, I recently learned that there's a complicated history of Jamaican patties in Canada. Is there a certain part of Canada?
Ontario.
Ontario.
Which is the province, that I'm from. Yeah, this it's an interesting story because back in the 1985 in Canada, The government went to basically every Jamaican patty shop in Toronto, and this will continue to cook down, and then we'll get this beautiful mixture. Again, the magic of chefs and what we do together. Thank you, Chef, very much. So in 1985, what happened was it was actually the Patty Summit, and so the Ministry of Food and Health went to patty shops, Jamaican shops all over the city, and they were fining every patty shop because of the name beef patty. And for the Ministry of Meat specifically outlawed anyone using this name and this title and describing something that was not an actual beef patty. And so beef patty is what we call it in Jamaica. We've always called, that's part of our culture. That's our, and so they were fining small business owners $5,000 to $10,000 back in the 80s.
Oh my God.
There's a documentary, if anyone's really, really interested in reading more, learn more about it. It's called Patty versus Patty, and it depicts the story of this crazy time in history that actually happens. And, it goes back to that conversation of people trying to erase our history, trying to erase our voices, trying to erase our food. And how do we counter that? Well, we band together, communities fought and pushed up against this, and then we were able to celebrate the fact that we're going to really give the title what it is. So it's now called Jamaican beef patty. So if you go to Toronto and you are looking for a patty, you're looking for a Jamaican beef patty. So now, did that suffice for all of us that were enjoying it and celebrating the food that we ate? It did, but it did put a real dampen on thinking about how we're constantly having to fight to tell our stories, and how our food is a part of it. It's not the only part, but it's a true essence of how we present ourselves and how we celebrate, something that is so personal for us. Beef patty is something I have had my whole life, and something that my father taught me how to do, my sister and my brother, in our kitchen in Florida when I was growing up. So the first thing that we would do is start with making our dough. So we would start with our butter. My dad usually would use a little, whatever we had on hand. So sometimes it might be some beef fat, sometimes it might be just some margarine, but we definitely always started with some AP flour, some butter. To get that color, that beautiful golden color, the key is the turmeric and or curry powder. But having that turmeric really brings that color through, and having the butter, for me, allows it to really kind of make that crust nice and flaky, and that's what we're looking for.
Okay.
So we're basically gonna dump in our flour right into our mixer. If you don't have a mixer at home, you can do this at home by hand. And basically, you would just make a little well in the center of your flour, and then you'd start adding in all of your ingredients. I like to add in all my dry first before adding in any of my liquid and any of my fat. So that's my butter for today. And then I'll turn on our mixer, and we'll go for a little bit before I start adding in slowly in the butter. Now, the great thing about making your own is that you can actually freeze it, and you can store it, and you can use it with other things. You can fill it with anything.
I might have to get some of this shrimp, dice it.
Right, exactly.
Make some patties with that.
Exactly. Well, that's the beautiful thing about patties now, is that you can really get a chance to experience patties filled with different things. It can be filled with ackee and saltfish. It can be filled with curry chicken. It can be filled with just about anything. I think everyone wants to take their own stab and interpretation of what patties mean to you, but for me, patty means Saturday or Sunday, clear countertop is wiped away, wiped down. We've made our egg wash using our egg, using a bit of water, using a bit of turmeric, whisk that together, and then we've got our finished dough here, and lay it out with our filling, fill them, bring the joy, and really celebrate what it was about. It was less about us making the patties and more about us working together as a family.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
I do want to go back a little bit to you talking about the Jamaican beef patties.
Yeah.
And just again, looking at it from the erasure, or possible erasure, right? Is that what started your advocacy work? Is that where that started? Because you do a lot and you advocate for a lot. And so is that kind of where, because you said that was like 1985, is that really where you kind of started thinking about the impact that you can have?
Yeah, well, and 85, I'm not gonna give my age, but I definitely was celebrating some music or something in the 80s, but I would say my advocacy really started with, the process of writing this book, and maybe even a couple years before starting to research my great-grandmother and understanding that coming from the foothill mountains in St. Elizabeth and hearing about the wars and having to be of maroon blood and how do you preserve your tribe, your community, and that's what she did. And so I'm coming from a line of like warriors.
It is in your DNA.
It's in my DNA, it's in my makeup. So understanding, researching, and learning about that, that's kind of really what catapulted me when I was marching in the streets of DC for, women's rights. And when I was in Toronto, marching on the streets for Indigenous history, for rights for Indigenous children. And that's something that I do now in communities where I'm, celebrating how do we get access to real food in Canada. We are a monster of a country, and yet we do not inhabit we don't inhabit maybe 60% of the country. And because of that, that eliminates us thinking that we don't have access. However, other means of being able to grow food and growing our indigenous food that makes our connection to understanding how food and food security and food apartheid and all of these conversations and how they present such a forward thinking in Canada for the many people that have never been. I think a lot of people think Canadians were just nice, we smile, we're just this, but we are so diverse. Not just to Ontario, the country itself. We have similar issues in America. I think it's North America. Chef, this is all ready to go. Thank you. In North America, Canada is just on the brink of seeing some real movements and changes, and I'm just grateful to really be a part of that. And as an advocate, it is something that I work at. I read a lot, I study a lot, I talk, I listen a lot to people that do inspire me. Coming to conferences like this, sharing in conversation, using agency to lift us up. These are ways that I continue to, preserve and unite. So, yeah, it's some work. Shall we get rolling to we're gonna make some patties now. Again, the magic that has already happened is that we've got some patties made, but we're going to do a quick demo. I mean, we just keep on making magic happen. Right. Y'all see that, right? Everyone sees that. And we're like getting close to time, so we're just like, okay, so I'm going to split this up. I'm going to give you half. Okay. We've got a rolling pin here, and we've got our brush. We've got a rolling pin, but listen, did we roll with rolling pins? Listen, at my house, my dad had an old bottle of white rum, overproof. Overproof, Sean. We might as well have been. But the overproof we used specifically when we were making black cake. And so that was when we were preserving any of our dark fruits for Chris Holiday, and you do that for the year before you're going to use it. So, anywho, so there is a piece. I'm going to split this in half. Okay. Now we've got some flour to just kind of put down on the board. And the thing about this is thank you, Chef. We've got all this flavor. We've got a lot of fat going on. So we want to make sure that it's not going to be watching our hands. Our hands are naturally warm. So bear that in mind when you're handling this dough. There's butter. There's a lot of butter in here. So
you want to handle it fast.
Handle it fast. And if you need to, put it back in the fridge and then take it back out. That's kind of like the art of really making your patty crust roll out and be nice and flaky and beautiful. So would you like to use the...
I don't know.
You're gonna flatten it on your own? I don't think is there rum, Chef? Do we have a bottle of rum? Now, the other thing about when making patties is that my dad never, ever had these beautiful stainless steel cutters that we see in pastry kitchens around wherever. Right. And so what did we use? We used a good old cup, teacup, bowl, whatever we had. And I think that to me was something that was really true about our household, is that my dad just kind of used whatever we had in the house. And I think using oxtail is a perfect example of taking something that was a cheap meat that was probably overlooked for generations and celebrating in a way by stewing it down with these aromatics, with these flavors. and then filling it in this wonderful, flaky, buttery crust. Why not, right?
And I love that you took this teacup out too, because again, right, having similar childhoods, it was the same thing with my grandmother. I would watch her cook, and there was the measuring cup, measuring cups was a teacup.
Yeah.
So when I would watch her, to get her recipes, I would have to then go, okay, that teacup is about 6 ounces, so that equals this, because there was no, 1 cup measuring cup and 3/4 of a cup. It was
Definitely
how much the teacup was filled.
We probably had like 1 measuring spoon in my house, and it was probably like a tablespoon, and that was like the measurement in the house.
Right.
And so I filled it, my dad would always say to us, like, don't overstuff the patty. That's like the most important thing. We're like, okay, Daddy, okay. But, I think for me, I like them nice and full, because what did I say earlier?
There's never enough oxtails.
There's never enough oxtails. Okay, so I'm going to flip this over so you can take a bit of the filling. If you don't want to use your hands, there's also a spoon.
Well, we're just going to use our hands.
And so the next thing is really kind of pressing it down, and you're creating this half moon shape. That is probably what we are all standard of seeing when we think of and when we visualize a patty. And so that is what I've been able to create here. How you're doing? Looking good.
I mean, it's thick.
It is thick. So now when
Mine's
rolling
gonna
out your
be thick.
pastry dough, you want to keep in mind, I go anywhere between an inch and a half to, sometimes a half inch. I like it a little bit on the thicker side, because with this particular recipe that's in the book, it really has a lot of flavor, a lot of juices. So it does tend to seep out. So keep that in mind when you're actually putting together. So I've got my bowl. And it's literally, we're just going to have it right up against the edge of the flap that we just folded over, and we're just going to do a nice little cut by pushing down and then removing the excess dough.
Okay.
You can use that one there.
That's not going to fit.
That's not going to fit? Oh, you want to use that one? There you go. And then we've got these beautiful patties. Now, patties, much like a lot of countries around the world, have their version of a stuffed pocket full, whether it's empanadas, whether it's, beef patties or Jamaican beef patties, as we can say from Canada. The real defining part of it becoming a patty is your fork. These particular indentations are like, they're necessary for it to really be celebrated as this classic dish that we celebrate so much in Jamaica. And if you find a patty shop that you love, whether you're in Brooklyn, whether you're in Jamaica, wherever you are, you can tell everybody. Share the world, so right around the edges, because, I think that patties will always be around. They'll shift in fillings, but I think that, it's something it's cheap to think about all of the ingredients and taking something that's kind of left over and filling it with so much joy. So just being very creative about how we utilize something like this, and how do we celebrate oxtail, and how do we celebrate this dough that celebrates still our colors and our flavor. So we've
I love
got
that you
these-
mentioned joy.
Joy is always
Yes.
in it, right? Thank you, Chef. So before it goes in, we would give a nice little brush with this beautiful egg wash that had the turmeric. And voila, we've got our finished patties. And what were you going to say about joy?
I just love that you ended this this presentation, this cooking demo, talking about joy and kind of centering that, because we do talk about, a lot about some of those trials and, that happens not only just as a chef, but just in our journeys. And so to end this on joy is just really, really special. Because I think also that the cooking is joy for us. And that's why there's usually music playing or dancing happening, or because it is a celebration.
100%. Somebody in our house was either on the DJ turntable spinning something, Peter Tosh, Bob Marley, something was always, and then there was something always cooking in the oven.
Yeah.
And I think joy is always something that I continue to do. Making these patties now with my son is something that I get to practice with him. And so we're now recreating these memories and recreating these stories that now look very different with being in a new country and celebrating the flavors and sometimes even trying to find some of these ingredients, but then celebrating the ingredients that we do have access to, because now that I'm back in the US, it's a different world of what's
yeah,
available
absolutely.
in Canada, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you,
I feel like, do you want to try one?
Oh, yes.
You guys get some tomorrow.
I absolutely will try.
And this is our fresh pepper sauce. It's got a bit of heat. Yeah.
That's everything. So definitely I would highly advise one, run not walking over to get a signed copy of Chef Suzanne's memoir, where we will find some of these recipes as well.
Yeah, this particular recipe, both of them are in the book. And I'll be signing the book right after this session, I believe. And thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So thank you, Suzanne. That was a wonderful demo, and I think for so many of us, tying together food and ingredients and smell and memory and family is really what got us interested in food. So to hear your own personal story is, really wonderful. And thank you, Edric. You were just a great moderator, and it's a great format to be able to have you both in conversation. Suzanne's oxtail patties with fresh pepper sauce and pepper shrimp with lime grilled pineapple will be available at tomorrow's marketplace lunch, as she mentioned. We are now going to head to the World Marketplace tasting and lunch on the second floor, where just some of the delectable dishes that you might have include a bacha and coconut salad with peanut butter sauce and pawpaw chutney, chicken pinchos with tamarind barbecue and pan de agua, and lime roasted okra. Zoe Ajonia will be signing her book, and so Suzanne will also, and so I would ask you to hold off on questions for her now. Let her get up to her book signing, buy her book, and you can have a conversation with her there. And then the musical vibe will be Caribbean with music by Ashton Craig and the Pan Ecstasy Trio. And then we meet back here in Eco Lab at 2:15 p.m. for General Session 6, where we will cook through the Afro-Latin kitchen. So thank you very much. Thank you.
From Kingston, Jamaica, the largest English-speaking city south of Miami, where cool reggae rhythms provide the background music for diners feasting on fiery hot jerk chicken, to San Juan's elegant dining rooms, where the clientele is as sophisticated as any in the world, to Tobago's beachside food stalls that offer treats that play on the sea's rich bounty. The Caribbean islands of Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and Trinidad and Tobago offer a complex world of flavors, where fine dining can be found side by side with a staggering array of street eats and finger-licking beach treats. Visit a region that is as familiar as fried chicken and as exotic as breadfruit and jackfruit. As we shop in markets that seem transported from the African continent, sample traditional dishes that were eaten in the region before the arrival of Columbus, and visit fine dining restaurants that equal any in the world. We'll stop in the kitchens of Chef Willow Bennett, a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America, who is transforming the traditional dishes of his native island into a nueva cocina puertorriqueña, a new Puerto Rican cuisine where past traditions inform modernist masterpieces. We'll watch as Chef Khalid Mohammed of Chaude Restaurant in Trinidad gives us a taste of two Trinidadian classics, and see a new generation of chefs improvising on the hearty foods of Jamaica. Hi, I'm Jessica Harris. I'm a culinary historian and a cookbook author, and for the past 40 years I've been traveling to the Caribbean region looking at food and culture. Most travelers never venture beyond the tourist enclaves, but I've made friends who will be our guides. So join us on this culinary voyage through the Caribbean, where we'll see the countries and the cuisines beyond the beaches. We'll investigate the region's core recipes, demystifying the classics, learning as pitmasters prepare a jerk rub of fiery Scotch bonnet chilies. We'll see land crab empanadillas prepared on a griddle made from tin sheeting, and discover a whole repertoire of sweets and candies. We'll even learn a bit about rum, the drink that is one of the region's major exports. We'll meet local chefs, jerk pitmasters, and some of the island's best cooks. We'll visit vibrant tropical markets, learn the Caribbean market basket, and see how each island adds its own ingredients and gives them its own unique flavor. We'll sample flavorful soups from roadside stands and savor beach treats like Puerto Rico's alcapurrias and Trinidad's bacon shark, and delight in the true tastes of the Caribbean. Savoring the best of world flavors, Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Trinidad and Tobago, is the 7th edition of the Culinary Institute of America's World Culinary Arts DVD series, a first-of-its-kind DVD reference library documenting the gold standard of world cuisine. In this volume, we'll explore markets, food stalls, roadside stands, and restaurants, and watch as their leading food authorities, chefs, and local experts discuss ingredients, present classic dishes, and demonstrate culinary techniques in step-by-step detail. Each region has signature dishes that bring a nostalgic smile to the faces of the island's locals and present the best flavors of their culture on a plate. Joining us on our journey is Steve Gilliba, certified master chef and corporate executive chef of Unilever Food Solutions. Steve knows a bit about the Caribbean, but he really discovers its true tastes as we travel to the region. American diners are increasingly adventurous, and many have now nibbled their way around the world. Today's restaurant customers are fascinated by bold, exotic flavors that build on techniques offering innovative twists on the traditional. Through this revolutionary series, the Culinary Institute of America seeks to document and preserve traditional foodways, offering chefs new inspiration and insights into authentic world flavors. More than one food writer has accused Caribbean cuisine of being repetitious regardless of country. How wrong they are. The main ingredients, root vegetables, leafy greens, fish and fowl, do indeed turn up on most of the tables in the region, but each island nation has its own unique flavor profile. The flat-leaf cilantro-like herb known as culantro goes into the Puerto Rican sofrito, and also turns up in Trinidad's green seasoning. But while one is used in dishes that bring the mild taste of Spain to the table, the other accentuates the vivid flavors of India and Africa in Trinidadian dishes, and is even drizzled on the Trinidadian beach specialty bake and shark. We'll prepare both of them and sample myriad local hot sauces and condiments. We'll taste the cassava bread of the Arawak that Columbus wrote about in his journals, and we'll sample true Jamaican jerk as it was originally developed in the Blue Mountains by freed slaves known as the Maroons. Journey with us as we investigate the local island markets, discovering the vast array of tropical fruits and vegetables that go into the pots. Taste hearty stews, substantial side dishes, and flavorful fish, and savor the true tastes of the Caribbean islands of Puerto Rico Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. There are goats gamboling in the grasses along the side of the road as we make our way north, reminding us that curry goat is a Jamaican tradition. Some Jamaicans argue that a party is not a real party unless there's curry goat. We sample it at Belfield Great House, an 18th century plantation that offers a trip into Jamaica's past. General manager and native Jamaican Michelle Rousseau's culinary background allows her to present the Jamaican classics like curry goat with new twists.
So we cooked the goat outside on a coal pot stove, and when we're finishing it, after we've cooked it in that traditional fashion, we add some coconut milk, which would not traditionally be used in the way that Jamaicans would prepare curry goat. We season it with a bit of ginger to bring in some of that East Indian influence as well, and then we put fresh mango and some white rum in there. And for presentation purposes, we serve it with a coconut rice pilaf, but we also serve some curried chickpeas, and then the whole slew of fresh chutneys and salsas and relishes and garnishes that really are more present in Caribbean cuisine in places like Trinidad, but would not traditionally be eaten here. So we did a really nice papaya salsa and a fresh banana and mango chutney and pickled onions and some cucumber and in yogurt, and really a variety of things. So we believe that you should be able to create the flavor of your own dish. So what we're going to do is really demonstrate for you today a traditional dish of Jamaican curry goat. It's considered the second most popular national dish. I would say after ackee and saltfish, it's probably the most consumed dish locally. And it is the perfect example of fusion cuisine from the 1800s, because goats were existing in Jamaica very early on, but were prohibited from the plantations, and slaves were not allowed to own goats, although they could own sheep and cows and pigs and other animals, and they were consumed mostly by the immigration of indentured laborers from India, who consumed a lot of mutton in India, and so they brought with them the technique of curry, and the two merged, and it's now become a very classic dish in Jamaica today. It's something that we use for a lot of festive occasions, at wakes or what they call 9 nights, but also at the end of a construction site or in any big celebration. They will kill a goat and have what you call a goat feed, and make a coal pot curry goat, which is what we're going to demonstrate today, as well as manish water, which is a soup that takes the innards of the goat and all of the intestines and makes a very hearty, tasty soup with pumpkin and seasonings and spices and typical Caribbean flavors. So we'll do a traditional version, and then we'll show you ways to modernize the dish as well. So here we have some local mutton or goat, what they used to call kid mutton back in the day. So we are going to marinate that, typically with some salt, pepper, a little bit of garlic, thyme, and some curry powder. And cooking in Jamaica is like a process that is an ongoing, long process. We actually start the process of cooking a couple of days before we intend to cook the dish, unless you're cooking a fresh slaughtered piece of meat, which we don't do. So we would marinate it and have it sit for a while. A little bit more curry to that. Now I'm not actually going to use a Scotch bonnet to marinate the goat, because I'm going to add it to the dish itself while I'm cooking. So that would sit for at least 3 or so hours, and then now we have a nice Dutch pot over here on a coal flame. So I'm adding a little bit of coconut oil. We're going to add the goat meat, which we're going to brown slightly. It really is a sort of a stew, but when I like to do it, I like to sear the meat first, because it brings out the flavor a bit more. And to that, we shall add some diced onion, a little bit of diced garlic. I like to add ginger, although traditionally they don't, so I'll add a little ginger to that. Scotch bonnet. Now, depending on how hot you like it, you can play with that quantity. Thyme is a must. The 4 basic seasonings in Jamaican cooking that must be in everything: scallion, thyme, tomato, Scotch bonnet pepper. our version of a mirepoix, I guess. The difficult thing about a coal fire is that you can't control the heat, but the good thing is it gets really nice and hot. So then to that now I'm going to add a little bit of more curry powder, which I'll allow to cook a bit, and some scallion. So you can already kind of smell it coming together, but it's really quite, it's a dish that, you know, when you had a whole goat would sit and stew from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. they say, and then it would be served no earlier than 1:30 after we had, the people had been able to consume a minimum of 4 glasses of rum. So they were well hungry, as it is says in one of an old recipe that I found for curry goat, and they were, I think, well tipsy is what I would say after 4 glasses of rum on an empty stomach. So add a little salt and pepper there, and then to that, to thicken it, we use some potato. Traditionally, you would have used maybe, you know, cocoa, or you can use any sort of ground provision, but we're using Irish potato. So when we add water to this now and it cooks down, that helps to thicken the stew. And then some carrots. Really very simple. All of the flavor comes in the cooking process. So we'll add a little bit of water to that just to cover. Bring that to a boil. And then let it simmer for a good number of hours, at least 2 hours to 3 hours. So the meat gets nice and tender. So this is what we have after we've simmered the goat for about 2 hours. And this is absolutely perfect to serve as it is. You can just adjust the seasoning with salt and pepper. But if you want to make it into more of like a modern nouvelle type flavored dish, we add a little bit of white rum, just a touch, because a lot of it will evaporate anyway. And we add a little bit of coconut milk powder, because traditionally it would not be cooked with coconut milk, but it really just gives the sauce some depth of flavor. And I like to add some fresh diced mango and let that stew down for maybe another 45 minutes. It lightens the color of the goat a bit, but it really gives it a slight sweetness to the dish that traditionally is not how it would be eaten. So this is a breadfruit which came off of our tree right here on the estate, and it came to Jamaica with Captain Blythe from Tahiti. It looks like this green, but it has a sort of meaty, soft fruit center that we roast on an open flame, and it gets really charged and lovely, and then you have this texture which is like the texture of bread, thus I think the name breadfruit. But we would serve this typically with a little bit of butter, fresh hot roasted from the fire. If you have old breadfruit, you can fry it and it can make great breadfruit chips, and it's really nice on the side of a little bit of curry, so because it sops up that gravy in a most delicious way. Let's serve up this curry goat now, because we have this lovely breadfruit to sop up all of the delicious gravy with the coconut milk and the mango and the Local goat can be a bit bony, so you have to mind the bones when you eat, but it's worth every bite. So here you go, Jamaican curry goat with roasted breadfruit, done on a coal pot fire right here at Belfield Great House.
Trinidad street food abounds with Indian names like Sahina, Aloo Pie, and Baghani. Trinis, as Trinidadians call themselves, are born nibblers. Eating on the street is a way of life, and at times it seems as though everyone is munching away on a snack, sipping from a coconut, or lined up awaiting the next tidbit. Visiting a local stand, Deborah treats Steve to a range of Trinidadian street food.
All right, so Steve, here we have a Sahina, which is basically the callaloo. That was basically flattened, and in between there we have the split peas as a fritter. And what we've done is we've opened it up and filled it with a little bit of mango, a little mango chutney, sweet and sour with a little bit of spice, so you get a balance. This is going to be salty, and I want you to cut it off a little piece.
This is done raw, the callaloo, yeah?
And then fried.
And just fried.
It's
so
blanched. It's blanched.
Oh, it is blanched first.
Yes,
then.
so that
okay.
it allows it to be pliable. And did you taste a little bit of the sweetness and a little
I
pepper
got
of the
more
mango?
of the green and so on, and get the mango.
Okay, so
but very.
pull another piece.
KB. Very good though.
Yeah.
You're
Now
nice
I got
and
the mango
right,
sweetness.
little sweetness that
Very
counteracts.
nice.
Now we put a little bit, traditionally you put a little bit more, or you may even have a little bit of a chickpea. So you're gonna have an aloe or potato pie next with a little bit of the chana in it, so you get to see the difference. Okay?
Oh, that's excellent.
And this is called sahina.
Sahina.
Yes. Okay. This one, by the time you finish, you're gonna get full. This is an aloe pie, which is basically a light dough that is fried with potato in it. And because we also have a lot of vegetarians, to make it a complete meal, the options are for you to put it with a little bit of a chana filling, and we also put a little bit of hot sauce to give you a little kick, and the sweetness to counterbalance a little bit of mango sauce.
So they kind of customize what
Yes.
you ask for. And,
Yes, you can have the basics, but then you can also make it a complete meal, something that's
and the
filling.
potato's right in the dough.
In the base. No, it's actually
on the
filled
bottom.
in, but on the bottom. If you look right here, you'll see a little bit of potato.
That's really good too.
Yeah, nice and light.
Get a little spice.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a hot sauce. I guess that's the hot
I told you
sauce.
to put a little bit of the hot sauce, and then you're gonna get a little sweetness with the mango. So you're kind of getting a little bit of, a little bit of sweet sour.
This is a breakfast food,
This
or
would be a breakfast or a mid-morning snack. You want something just before, and some people will probably have 2 or 3 of these, and for them, if you're not a heavy lunch person, with a nice cold beverage, and you're good to go. But it's a complete meal in the sense of having the protein if you're vegetarian. It's nice and hot, so.
Really nicely done.
And now we have another fritter. This is an eggplant based, or baigani.
Baigan.
But eggplant based fritter. What she's put in it is just a little bit of hot sauce and a little bit of the sweet mango sauce, so you can get the real essence of the eggplant.
So they're filling this afterwards with the eggplant.
Yeah.
So it's
No, the eggplant is
in the fritter.
In the fritter, and then you add the various condiments and relish. So like any kind of sauce, any pepper sauce.
So it's the same dough that they're using for both. Base dough.
For the fritters.
So one had potato, one had eggplant.
Right, but this is a different.
That's a different. That's more of a.
Peas, more
that's
of a
more
lentil
liquid,
base.
right?
More of a lentil base, where this is more of a flour base.
Well, I see some in the back.
You see the
eggplant there?
Yeah.
Oh, I really like this one.
Yeah. Okay, this is doubles, which is, I would call it the official breakfast food of Trinidad and Tobago. This is a bara, so you can basically show them. Very light, fried, and basically filled with, traditionally, would be the chana, some sort of sweet sauce or hot sauce. Could be tamarind, could be cucumber relish. We have a little pepper sauce. Some people go heavy on the pepper, some people say no pepper. But the idea is to put the next one on top. And then this is really like just get in there and pull it.
And make a mess.
Yeah. So you gotta hold it and you gotta pull
Well,
it.
let me try this. Oh, you gotta
Take
pull?
your hand and there you go.
Oh, this is messy.
And
Gotta train me how to eat is the problem.
And kind of, okay, I don't want,
Go ahead.
dip it in, scoop it in there and get some of that chana.
They're all really good. This had a little more sweetness.
Yes.
The dough?
It's a little bit of the sauce that she put on for you.
Okay.
The chana is just kind of melts in your mouth, really nice and soft. But that's kind of like, you put that and you just kind of dig in and
That's the hard part. Or the hard part to get
you
used
gotta
to.
leave the camera.
You know?
Yes, yeah, there you go.